Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I work as a night shift nurse at Memorial Hospital. One incident from years ago sticks with me because it shows the power dynamics in healthcare that can work against patients. It was around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday when we got a patient transfer from the emergency room. The man was in agony, holding his abdomen and wincing with every movement. His wife stood beside him, worried as she held his hand. You could tell they'd been together for decades. When I introduced myself, I noticed the pain in his eyes. I told them I would be their nurse for the night and would get him comfortable. The patient could barely speak, so his wife did most of the talking. She thanked me and told me her husband had been in pain for hours. She said they did some tests in the emergency room, but he hadn't gotten anything for the pain. This seemed odd. I checked his chart and saw that the emergency room doctor had ordered his admission, but hadn't written any pain medication. This wasn't normal, especially for someone in such pain. I stepped out to call the doctor on duty, Doctor Know-it-all. I told him I had a patient from the emergency room in severe pain, but there were no pain medication orders. I asked if he could authorize something. Dr. Know-it-all said he wouldn't order anything until he reviewed the chart and saw the patient himself. I asked him why, since he had already seen the patient in the emergency room. He said he needed to check the patient on the floor and would be up shortly. He hung up before I could ask more. Some doctors are careful about giving pain medication. I went back to the patient's room. I said sorry and told them that the doctor wanted to review the case before ordering pain medication, adding that he'd be up soon. The wife's look changed from worry to irritation. She said her husband had already been seen and was in pain, then asked how long they would have to wait. I told her I understood and would keep checking with the doctor. About 15 minutes later, Dr. Know-it-all came to our floor. I went up to him. I reminded him about my patient, who was still in severe pain, and asked if he could examine him now and order something for relief. Dr. Know-it-all said he needed to review these charts first. He then gathered several patient charts, sat down at the nursing station, and started looking through paperwork that had nothing to do with my patient. It was like he was ignoring the urgent situation. I went back to the patient's room feeling helpless. I said sorry again and told them that although the doctor was here, he was reviewing charts before seeing patients. The wife's face turned red. The patient was now sweating from the pain. She said this was unacceptable and asked where the doctor was, wanting to speak with him herself. I told her I would take her to him right away. I was happy to take her to the nursing station. Sometimes families can say things that staff cannot. I told Dr. Know-it-all that the patient's wife wanted to speak with him. What happened next surprised me. This quiet, polite woman changed before my eyes. She told the doctor about her husband being in pain for over 5 hours without relief. She said they had been patient, followed every instruction, and had been seen by 3 different medical professionals, including him, at the emergency room. She asked if this was how he treated all his patients or just the ones at night when he thought no one was watching. She said while she knew he had protocols, basic human kindness should tell him that a person shouldn't suffer when he could help. She said if he needed to examine her husband again, he should do it now, or if he was worried about medication problems, he could check the records. She made it clear that doing nothing was not an option. The doctor changed instantly. He put down the chart and stood up. He said sorry for the delay, said she was right, and would see her husband right away. Within 5 minutes, he had checked the patient and written orders for pain relief. I gave the medication, and within half an hour, the patient was able to rest. The wife talked to me in the hallway later that night. She thanked me for taking her to the doctor, saying, "Doctors need to remember there are real people behind those charts." I told her I should thank her, saying that nurses advocate for patients, but there's only so much we can say. She told me she wasn't worried about losing her job there, just worried about her husband. We smiled. So here's to all the advocates who speak up when medical professionals forget their main job. I moved into this area about 6 months ago. Everyone seemed friendly enough, regular waves from across the street, occasional small talk at the mailboxes, nothing out of the ordinary. I work from home and my parking spot is right in front of my apartment. On the street, it's not assigned or anything, but everyone in the building has their usual spots. Mine happens to be next to this older sedan that's seen better days. The paint was already peeling off in places, it had a dent in the rear bumper, and rust was forming around the wheel wells. It looked like it hadn't been washed in years. One Tuesday morning I heard aggressive knocking on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was a bit confused. I opened the door to find a man I recognized as living 2 doors down. Before I could say anything, he started yelling at me, demanding I open up and accusing me of being inside. When I opened the door, he immediately accused me of scratching his car the previous day while parking. I was caught off guard. He pointed at me angrily, describing his blue sedan and claiming I had scratched the passenger side door when I parked next to it the evening before. I tried to defend myself, explaining that I hadn't scratched anyone's car and that I'm always careful when parking. The neighbor called me a liar, insisting the scratch wasn't there before I parked and demanding that I pay for a repaint. I suggested we go look at the alleged damage together. When we went outside to examine his car, I was surprised by what he showed me. It wasn't a fresh scratch at all, just a long streak of peeling paint that matched the poor condition of the rest of his car. I pointed this out to him, showing how his paint was peeling all over the car, not just in that one spot. He refused to listen, insisting that I had caused the damage and demanding a full repaint job by the end of the week. I refused to pay for a repaint, telling him that I hadn't caused any damage to his car. He made a threat that I would regret my decision before walking off. 2 days later, I went out to run some errands and found a deep intentional scratch along the driver's side of my car. This was deliberate. I knew who did it. I knocked on his door trying to stay calm. When he answered, I asked him if he had scratched my car. He pretended not to know what I was talking about, but his smirk gave him away. He taunted me, asking if I now understood how it felt and if I still wanted to deny scratching his car. I told him I hadn't scratched his car before, but he had scratched mine now, and I would report it. He mocked my threat, saying I couldn't prove it was him because no one had seen anything. He was right. There were no security cameras on our street, and none of our neighbors had seen anything. I filed a police report anyway, but nothing came of it. The repair estimate for my car came to $800, which my insurance would only partially cover. For a week, I felt angry every time I saw his car or him walking by with that smug look. Then an idea came to me. He wanted a repaint? Fine, I'd give him one. I waited until 2 a.m. on a Saturday when the street was quiet. I put on old clothes, grabbed 2 gallons of bright neon pink paint from my art supplies, and snuck out. Within minutes, his beaten-up blue sedan was transformed into a dripping fluorescent pink mess. The paint pooled around the tires and splattered the pavement. I got rid of the evidence and went back to bed with a sense of satisfaction. The next morning I was woken by screaming. I looked through my blinds to see him standing by his car, hands on his head. Several neighbors had gathered around, some hiding smiles, others laughing. Within the hour, he was at my door again, this time with a police officer. The neighbor accused me of throwing paint all over his car and demanded that the officer arrest me. The officer asked if I knew anything about the incident. I denied any involvement, saying I had been asleep all night. The neighbor called me a liar, insisting I had done it because I thought he scratched my car. When the officer asked if he had any evidence it was me, the neighbor could only say that it had to be me, questioning who else would do such a thing. The officer explained that without evidence or witnesses there wasn't much he could do. This only made the neighbor more furious, as he continued to threaten that this wasn't over and that he knew it was me. I made a comment about him finally getting the new paint job he wanted. The officer took some notes and left. The neighbor glared at me for weeks afterward, but he couldn't prove anything and eventually he moved out. I handle awkward situations with a direct approach. Some call it boldness, others say I lack a filter. It's helped in my job as a high school counselor, where teenagers try to shock me daily, but nothing prepared me for meeting my partner's family, especially the father-in-law. My partner warned me before our visit. They told me their dad thinks he's funny and likes to make people uncomfortable with inappropriate comments. They said he wasn't dangerous, just a jerk who never grew up. I told my partner not to worry. I deal with teenage boys trying to embarrass me all day and doubted their father could say anything I hadn't heard before. My partner looked skeptical. They said nobody stands up to their father. Their mom sighs, their siblings leave the room, and guests turn red and change the subject. They said it had been their father's power move for decades. The drive to their parents' home was pleasant. The mother-in-law greeted us at the door, showing us into their living room where family members had gathered. The father-in-law sat in his armchair, drinking whiskey despite it being only 2 p.m. The father-in-law announced my arrival, calling me the famous partner they'd been hearing about while looking me over. I smiled and shook his hand. The first hour passed with talk about our drive and family news. After dinner, we moved to the back patio. The mother-in-law had made coffee and dessert, but the father-in-law had switched to beer. I could tell from my partner's tense posture that they were waiting for the inappropriate comment. When the conversation lulled, the father-in-law said he had a way to tell a lot about a woman's personality. After drinking his beer, he asked if I was shaved or natural. Then he looked at my crotch. My partner froze beside me. The mother-in-law said something about checking on dishes. The sister-in-law looked at her phone. Everyone was uncomfortable, which was what he wanted. I don't back down from bullies. He was a grown man using crude humor as a power play to make others uncomfortable. Schoolyard behavior in a 60-year-old body. I looked at him, took a sip of coffee, and told him that I trim, explaining it's the best way to be hygienic without causing skin issues. I said too short can lead to ingrown hairs and irritation, but completely natural can make hygiene harder during menstruation. I said a middle ground works best for my body. There was silence. His mouth hung open. My partner made a choking sound. The father-in-law's face turned red. The father-in-law stammered, unable to speak properly. I asked if I had misunderstood his question. I mentioned he was looking at my pelvic region, so I thought he wanted information about my pubic hair grooming habits. I asked if I was wrong. The sister-in-law left, but I heard her laughing inside. The mother-in-law returned with a smile. The father-in-law said I wasn't supposed to actually answer and that it was just a joke. I asked what the punchline was supposed to be. I asked how asking invasive questions about a woman's genitals counts as humor and asked him to explain. He mumbled, grabbed his beer and went inside. Everyone relaxed. The mother-in-law patted my shoulder. For the rest of the weekend, the father-in-law was civil. He didn't make inappropriate comments to anyone. When we left, he gave me a nod. On the drive home, my partner was smiling. They said they'd never seen anyone handle their father like that. They said usually people get embarrassed, which feeds his ego. I said bullies only have power when you give them the reaction they want. Take that away. They don't know what to do. My partner said their father told their mom I wasn't any fun because I didn't get embarrassed. They said this was his way of admitting defeat. At home, my partner gave me a high five and said it was the most successful family visit they'd ever had. Being direct about trimming my pubic hair earned me respect in the family. I've visited 3 more times. The father-in-law has been appropriate around me. Sometimes he looks like he wants to say something outrageous, but meets my eye and stops. He's met someone who won't play his game. When someone expects you to be embarrassed, being matter-of-fact can be your weapon. I ended up with a champion show dog when I was around 10 years old. One day my mom came home and told me someone would bring over a dog for me the next day and that we needed to get supplies. I was happy. I've been begging for a pet for years, but my mom always said our apartment was too small or that we couldn't afford one. Now I was getting a dog. It felt like a dream. When the doorbell rang the next day, I rushed to answer it. There stood a woman with a beautiful, purebred dog on a fancy leash. The dog had silky fur, perfect posture, and looked like something from a pet magazine. The woman introduced the dog as Rex and told me he was mine now. She said he was already trained and well behaved. I thanked her and told her how pretty I thought the dog was. She told me to take good care of him, saying he deserved it. She handed me the leash, gave my mother some paperwork and a bag of expensive dog food, then left. I didn't care about the strange handoff. I was busy getting to know my new best friend. Rex settled in perfectly. He was well trained, never had accidents inside, and seemed to know when I needed comfort. At night, he'd curl up on my bed, and when I came home from school, he'd greet me with excited little dances. He was the perfect companion. About a year later, we took Rex to the vet for a checkup. The vet's eyes widened when he scanned Rex's microchip. The vet asked if we knew who this dog really was. When my mom told him Rex was given to us by a friend of a friend, the vet revealed that this was Champion Rexford of Golden Meadows. He told us Rex had won Best in Show at 3 major competitions and was famous in the show circuit a couple years ago. I was shocked. My lovable mutt was actually dog royalty. The vet told us Rex belonged to an expensive purebred line and would have been worth thousands of dollars as a breeding dog. He added that since Rex had been neutered, his breeding days were over, but he was still a remarkable pet to have. On the drive home, I asked my mom how I had ended up with such a valuable dog. She just said sometimes people's loss becomes someone else's gain, and changed the subject. It wasn't until I was 16 that I finally heard the full story. My mom and I were looking through old photos, and she found one of Rex from a newspaper clipping about a dog show. I told my mom I still didn't understand why someone would give away such an expensive dog. She said it was a grown-up story but figured I was old enough to hear it now. She told me Rex had belonged to the wife of one of her co-workers' cousins. The woman was involved in dog shows and had spent years building Rex's career. Her husband wasn't interested in the shows but had formed a special bond with Rex. My mom described how the dog was glued to the husband when he was home. Rex would sleep on his lap during TV time and follow him everywhere. When I asked why she gave him away, my mom told me the husband had been seeing another woman behind his wife's back. When the wife found out, she was upset and angry. I asked if that's why she gave the dog away, and my mom explained it was more than that. She had Rex neutered first, which meant he could never be used for breeding. Then she gave him away to a family with a child who would love him. That was us. And then she filed for divorce. I said that seemed cold, and my mom explained this was petty revenge. She knew taking away his favorite dog would hurt him more than anything else she could do legally. I sat there thinking about this, looking at Rex snoozing on the couch. He'd been part of some dramatic adult relationship that he had no understanding of. A few years later, when I was in college, I met the woman who had given us Rex. My mom ran into her at a store and invited her over for coffee. She wanted to see how Rex was doing. When she arrived, Rex didn't seem to recognize her at all. He gave her the same friendly greeting he gave all our visitors. I asked the woman if she ever regretted giving him away. She said she hadn't for a minute. She told me her ex-husband called her once a year on Rex's birthday to beg her to tell him where the dog went, but she never did. I said that seemed harsh. She said it might be, but it was also harsh finding her husband in their bed with her friend while she was at a dog show winning Rex another ribbon. I said that was fair. The woman pointed out how happy Rex seemed with us, saying we were the perfect home for him. Rex had climbed onto my lap by then, all 60 pounds of him still thinking he was a lapdog. I scratched behind his ears, his favorite spot. The woman said my ex-husband used to do that same thing. She said Rex would sit on his lap for hours while he watched sports. I told her Rex still does that with me, especially during exams when he seems to know I need the comfort. She said that proved she made the right choice. The difference, she said, was that I deserved his loyalty. After she left, I gave Rex an extra treat and thought about how this pampered show dog had become my companion through childhood and adolescence, all because of someone's need for revenge. Rex never knew he was a pawn in their divorce game. To him, I was just his person, and he was my dog. Sometimes I wonder if the ex-husband still thinks about Rex. I hope he does, because Rex has been the best pet anyone could ask for, and that man missed out on years of companionship because he couldn't stay faithful. Rex is getting older now, but he still tries to be a lapdog when I sit down. I guess old habits die hard, especially when they're filled with love. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.